So I was wanted to make another video about my biological father. And I was thinking, it may have not been him. He looked a lot like me. There's a lot of impersonators that they always use as people. They always use as people that look exactly like someone, particularly they're trying to identify, like my biological father, Michaela's mother, Michaela, Ken Cooper, Sarah Cooper, Kenneth, Barack Obama, and then they use that environment against me. But as far as it goes with the lunch I had with my mother the last time I saw her, which was like many years ago, and when I saw what looked like to be Sarah Cooper talking to him, but it wasn't her. It looked exactly like her, and like she looked like she was just kind of like with her arms crossed like this, like kind of leaning back, like, oh, huh? Oh, you didn't do nothing. And the conversation didn't look like particularly it was engaged in a comfortable conversation. It looked like he was just kind of like, oh, okay, Sarah, okay. But, it was very, very quick for an instant that I saw him. And I don't know, I want to say that when I saw him, I don't know if I saw him either wipe like tears away and then look at Sarah or the impersonator and it was my biological father, maybe it wasn't. But I want to say he made direct eye contact, like he looked at me for a second. And I mean, he looked scared. If I remember, maybe he did. I want to say like 70%, 75%. I can remember. I think he looked at me. But if he did look at me, he looked scared, like he was under some sort of control of somebody else and trying to fend for his own life. And Michaela's mother looked, if that was her, definitely looked like she was, having, a lot of authority put over her, and everybody was sitting at their own table. But I'm thinking, when I was talking to my mother, was that one of the reasons my mother started to kind of tear up and cry? Like she didn't had tears coming out, but her eyes got red, like she was crying, asking for help. It was just like all this torment that had happened, that they had done to her and me, and what was so sacred to our immediate family at that time was basically just squandered for everyone else to dissect and do whatever they want, and they did. But maybe that was why my mother got teary as well, because she knew that was him. But I don't know what my mother's mental state of mind is, other than me telling her what was going on, and she knew that I was in desperation. But I had no idea. And one of the reasons that I think is because, this is just now coming to me that I'm like, wait a minute, was that him? No, I don't even know, because they were setting up, and I talk about that when I was 29 years, was it 29? I was 29 or 30 years old. No, I was 29 years old, and I was working for Sir Speedy, and I saw Hailey Spades. I swore, I'm almost positive it was her. And why would somebody send her to drive then a red Camry Toyota, same car that Patricia Gardina was when I got raped by that transgender? And I was thinking, why would they? I don't know who this person is. And and that was pretty much it. She came in one or two times into the Sir Speedy and just, I think, got some work paper or something that they were printing or something like that. But if they set that up, why wouldn't they set up everything else? And I was thinking, obviously my mom and her identical twin were fooling me, and my biological mother doesn't know, I don't feel, in fact I know it isn't in any good mental well-being. because of all the harassment that Barack Obama sent after her and her kids, and then exchanging it because he just sees her as a stupid ass, and it's my mother, and there's nothing that I can do about it. It's difficult because all that remember is the things that my mother behaved and did when I was younger that were good, and it's just for him, and it's like Auschwitz. It's like the torturing things that these Nazi soldiers did to people for laughter. How the Nazi soldiers are just laughing, and how much power and what they could get away with. My mother's mind is their playground, just like what they're doing to me, but worse probably. And they're exchanging it for money. So, but I thought it was worth talking because I'm thinking, I remember him kind of like either wiping some tears or he looked like he was trying to withdraw some emotions. But when I first walked in and he turned and looked, I don't know if it was him or not though. But like, I don't know, because he had a full set of gray hair. I mean, full set of all gray hair. He looked old. He looked like would have been the same age. He looked like he would have been the same age as what he would have probably been if he was still alive. And he looked like he was pleading to Sarah. That's what it looked like. And this person, he looked like he was like saying, "Oh, thank you," or "sorry," or I wasn't a good guy," and all this other shit. It just didn't look like the conversation didn't look like they were together. It looked like very much he was just kind of begging. That's what it looked like. And like, if I were to make a statement of it, looked like he's just trying to survive on his own because all the bullshit, all the harassment. There's no telling how much they harassed him if he's still alive at his job site and all these different things, and trained him to behave and think of me as a certain kind of way. And so I don't know if I don't know if I was wiping away tears, but he looked like he was. When I turned around a few times and I looked over that direction, he looked emotional and like there were some emotions being withheld. But I don't know, maybe it wasn't him, because it was probably like 25 feet away from me, and then there was a crowd of people on two like large tables, like a group party, so it was kind of hard to kind of look between all those people. And one of the reasons that I think that it may also have been him is because obviously I didn't know up until now that all these people are coming around me, and then they start giving their secret messages about, poisoning my head. Everywhere I go, every place I go is unbelievable hatred and bullying. That's all it is, everywhere I fucking go. And I thought, when I was in Colorado, what was the name of that city? It was near Denver, Colorado, when I worked at the ski resort. And when I was working at the ski resort, where they have the lift operators taking all the people up to the mountain, and I had to scan people, there was one Indian guy. There was one Indian guy, like from India, and look educated, probably, I don't know, wealthy. Obviously, you don't skiing, you're probably wealthy. And he just walked by and scanned it. He kept on looking down. He didn't really he just kind of looked. He just made a quick, soft glance and just kept his head down. He goes, "Yeah, that's me over there." And then he just skied off, but not in an aggressive way. And he was just looking. He goes, "Yeah, that's me over there." And he was kind of had his eyes like this, like I was to his right where that camera is, and he kind of like looked, and he goes, "Yeah, that's me over there." And then he skied off. And so maybe that was him. Or maybe he could have meant something else. But there was one other thing I wanted to talk about is Patricia Gadena's, which could have been Cisco's sister. I still don't know. I think it is, but it may not have been. I still don't know exactly. And so I was thinking, if you were to put a transgender that had a sex change, can a female know, like herself at 19 years old, that this person had a sex change? And that may have been why she was maybe not reluctant, be like, well, she probably thought that this girl wasn't probably knew this girl was a transgender, but didn't know that this person had a sex change, had their testicles and penis removed. And the fact is that she doesn't know that. She doesn't. How could she have known? And it was so weird because she showed up. I want to say she showed up with her, or they showed up in different cars maybe, and then they started driving the car together. And I'm thinking, why would, if that was Cisco's sister, I'm thinking 60% it was. I'm leaning toward it might have been, because I think she was 19 at the time, 19 or 20 years old. And she wouldn't have known that this person had a sex change. So why would she be driving in a car with someone who had a sex change? I understand some natural born females, occasionally hang out with transgenders or for whatever reason, but it's very uncommon that I'm aware of. And I don't think a 19 or 20-year-old girl necessarily would be doing that unless, I'm thinking, I don't know what the connection was. I don't know. I don't have any earthly idea to what that story was. And because I talked about this, that I remember Patricia Gadina looking over at her like trying to control her. And I remember her looking at her, kept on looking at her like she was crazy. Like she was like, there's something wrong. Like you're crazy or something's wrong. And I remember just looking, and from far away from the class, on the complete opposite side of the class. But I don't know. I still, obviously this is 13 years now. And, but one thing is that I was now recently just thinking, she didn't know that girl had a sex change. She knew something was wrong with this person, or something was weird. That's for sure. And respecting her, and okay, well, that's your life, but how many people can you take a look at knowing they had a sex change and you wouldn't know that they did? And that I know it's not her fault. It has nothing to do. It's not her fault at all. But because she obviously knew who I was, and if that was Cisco's sister, and she knew I was good friends with Cisco, with Richard Murphy, John Basile, Anthony Basile, Jeremy King, John Murphy, all those crew, Nick Carrera, how we used to hang out. We were all close through high school, extremely close, spending the night at Richard's house all the time, playing video games, hanging out. So she knew that we were all very close and went to school together, because John Basile used to go over there, Jeremy used to go over there, but they very seldom went over there. Very seldom. It was very once in a while. We went over there a few times, but it was pretty seldom that they went over there. The crew was always either at John's, Jeremy's, or Richard's. And even more primarily at Jeremy's and Richard's. But I'm thinking she knew. Obviously she would have felt some sort of a brotherhood, because her brother, obviously Cisco, doesn't particularly talk like someone that's very masculine, but, he has kind of a sort of a flamboyant kind of voice a little bit. But we all got along pretty well, very along. All of us did. But And I thought I would say something about that. So she didn't know. There's no way she would have known that this person would have had a sex change. So if this person, if I was going to, she knew, well, this person is going to get this person's number. You know, obviously when that person pulls their pants down and they have a penis and balls, you know, that's entirely going to be your choice. So that's no way her fault, because she didn't know this person had a sex change. She had no idea. But I do remember her looking at her like she was nervous or scared, like not just like her well-being, but like there's something wrong with this person. Like there's this, like, because she was looking at her like what the, like looking and looking and looking both eyes, like what, something's wrong, like something's not right, something's not good. And I mean, it must have been pretty weird, because I think she was the one that was driving the car. And when she was driving the car, how could she have gotten in the car and felt so weird being around that person? Like, you know, and when did she realize? Because I want to say they showed up in different cars. They showed up in different cars, and then they started carpooling. I want to say, or like started showing up in the same, you know, car, and or something like that. But you know, obviously this tragedy always falls on me and this girl and the people in the classroom and whatnot. But I wanted to say something about that because I thought it was important. As I do feel the sense of empathy for that girl, because she didn't know. How are you supposed to look at somebody and know they had a sex change? You know, for those that did and, you know, went through a full sex change, and, you know, I don't know the drugs they take for hormones and, you know, pills for, you know, for the physical body to make it more like females, and I don't know any of that anatomy kind of stuff, and medications they take and what it does damaging to the brain. But I thought it was important for me to talk about, and there was one other thing I wanted to talk about homophobia. And you know, homophobia is, I think, is a very misunderstood word. And one of the things that I want to explain about this is I went to Six Flags with Julian, me, Jeremy, and Frankie. It was 4 of us. The 3 brothers and Jeremy showed up with us, and we went to Six Flags. And we went to Six Flags. I want to say we went twice. We went once with, I think, me, Frankie, and Julian. Just me, Frankie, and Julian, and then we went another time with me, Frankie, Julian, and Jeremy. And I want to say we went twice. Maybe Jeremy was doing something else when we went rock climbing. Because me, Frankie, and Julian, we all got up on the same wall and we were all rock climbing. And I don't know if Jeremy was with us or not. He may have not been. He could have been. Maybe it was just one time. I can't remember. It was so long ago. But this is what I do remember. I was really good friends with Jeremy at this time. And I think how old was I? Was I 18? No. I could have been 18. I just turned 18, maybe. Because I remember wearing jeans, and I remember being very skinny and being very young. And I don't think I was 19. I'm going to say I think I was 18. And I recall that I went to go do something by myself, and I left Jeremy with Frankie and Julian. And I went to go do something for like 10 or 15 minutes. I don't know, get some food or drinks or go look at something, or I don't know what it was, for like 10 or 15 minutes, just to let them talk among each other, because I knew Jeremy's family so well, and I thought it was interesting for him, Jeremy, to get familiar with Julian and Frankie for a minute without me there. And I remember, and it was at the beginning of the trip at Six Flags, and I remember going through Six Flags, and I remember Jeremy looking at me, And the way that he was looking at me, and we were walking all of a sudden, and I knew Jeremy in and out. His behavior changed. And the way his behavior changed was, oh, you're straight. Oh, and he looked at me and kind of looked at me. He goes, oh, okay, Hector. And he just did that. And to me, there's nothing registering that really even Frankie was gay, or there's nothing about sexual orientation that I'm really identifying with any of them, other than we're all friends and brothers. But the only way that Jeremy would have ever behaved like that, Jeremy Keene, is if he talked, and this is what I thought happened, that he talked to Frankie, and they were like, no, he's not gay, he's straight. So I was separated because they were all gay, and I remember that. And I was bothered a little bit by it because I was like, I remember him sort of kind of like distancing himself from me, like kind of like a prejudiced act, but not necessarily hatred, but it was just like, oh, you're different. And I remember that. But I knew that Frankie and Jeremy had talked, and that for a moment and identified me like that. So I remember that, and I think Frankie was probably perfectly fine, because knowing that I was really good friends with Jeremy at the time, and for so many years, that he was really excited to meet my brothers, and so I knew Frankie was probably more on the lenient side by then, but I thought it was important for me to talk about it. I remember that very clearly, very 100%. I remember that clearly, looking at him, and I remember him like he thought straight was a persona. Like, I don't know what it is about the gay community, and they function different, but I didn't understand that at 18 years old. Obviously a lot of people carry shame and don't want anybody to know for an entire lifetime, and some are more open than others. But I remember him doing that. I remember him doing it like I was different, like I was like, I remember that very distinctively. And I didn't know, I was thinking to myself, like, why is he behaving like that? Like, and not like I was angry in any way, upset in any way. I just knew, like, he was distancing himself from me, like I was any more different, like I was more different than we were when we got there, and all the years I had ever known him. And I knew that Frankie had told him. 100%, I knew Frankie had told him, and I saw Jillian kind of going along with it, and that's why I knew. So I thought I'd make a video on that, but not that there was nothing bad about that, but I do remember him separating me from that situation, where he was just like, nah, he's not one of us. And I just didn't understand why I was any different from all these other years I've known you. All of a sudden, like, oh, I'm straight because I'm different. And this is the behavior that all homosexuals do and have among each other. But I thought I'd make a video on it and talk about it. But one other thing I want to continue talking about is I'm still puzzled about my biological father, if that was him. I can't, because it was far and there was a crowd of people, and it was hard to be able to, because there was like 15 people, and you have all these people sitting on both sides of the table and on both ends in a group party, and I kind of had to do this and kind of look to see over them. And I wanted to say that I saw this guy go like this, or he wiped away his tears, or his eyes, he looked emotional, but he was blocking off a lot of emotions. But I do remember him very distinctively, and maybe that's why my biological mother, because it's so confusing to me, because when we're sitting at that table, there's a girl that looks, okay, this is obviously it's a Mexican restaurant, but she looks a lot like Cisco's sister, and she's the waitress. And when she shows up, she's pretty aggressive. She's a real female, but she seems very aggressive. She seems very like, okay, I got to make sure I'm the authority right here. What do you need? And she was like writing whatever we're ordering for food. And she particularly wasn't very nice to me. I could tell the tone and sort of talking, and she looked at me kind of crazy. She could have maybe been a transgender. Maybe, I don't know. I couldn't tell, but she looked very much female. So, but she looked exactly like Cisco's sister, and I remember looking at her and I thought, I don't know, maybe she was, I think she could have been a transgender, because you can tell sort of the man hatred look, the hatred look in transgenders is disgusting. It's a crazy look. And, especially whenever they know who I am and all this being raped and I'm taking control of my mother's money and all these things that's going on. But I remember my mother looking over at her and she goes, oh no, I don't know how to use the phone. She said something about her phone, like letting her know like oh, I don't know how to use the phone, and looked over at her. So she may have been saying that because they told her to say that. But she said that she told the waitress, I don't know how to use my phone or something like that. And, obviously when she said that, all I'm thinking of is like, more stress. Because like, overload of stress, because my mother is from Mexico. You know how much technology people can take advantage of over your phone and tap your phone and do your emails and all this kinds of stuff. And I'm like, if they can take advantage of me and everything that they're doing in this day and age of what people have phones, imagine what they can do to somebody like my mother. Even someone who grew up in America, or in a foreign country and came to the U.S. and is like in their 50s and 60s, what do they know about technology on phones? And what do they know about that? Nothing. You could take advantage of them very easy, and it's even easier for somebody that comes from Mexico and doesn't understand what's going on. So I thought I would say something about this. I'm just like right in the last few days, I'm like, is that him? It looked like him, but I remember seeing just a lot of gray hair, full gray hair. He had a full set of hair, but it was just all gray, like old gray, like on the verge of turning all white, but it was just all gray. And, maybe a tad bit frost of black, but I mean, it was all gray. It was all gray hair. His body build was the same. And I want to say when I first walked in, stop shooting me. You're shooting something in my eyeball, and it actually hurts the actual socket of the eyeball on there. And but I can't remember if that was him, or like I don't want to say I can't remember. I don't know if that was him or not. But because when he looked at me, he looked at me. I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna say he looked directly at me when I first walked in, and I kind of withdrew a little bit, like, because I thought, obviously, so many people give me these crazy looks whenever I'm about to talk to my mother or go to dinner with her, or say lunch. I'm gonna go to lunch because they want to make sure they keep more control over her, because they automatically labeled me as the bad person in her life. That's all they have me as. And the more that they do that, the more they can manipulate her, get her twin to do it, and then manipulate the kids, and then turn everything more against me, and then say it was for Ken Cooper, Sarah Cooper, always, because we don't know what's going on. And it just snowballs to their victory. It would be wild. It would be pretty crazy if it was him, because when I had that lunch with my mother, I was 37 years old. I want to say I was 37 years old. And it was when I took my trip to Dallas. I was living in Denver, Colorado, but I took a trip to go to the UT Southwestern Medical Center at Zale Ipsy to go there to talk to my doctor, oncologist doctors and bone marrow transplant doctors, Dr. Verascala, which is in India, a lady from India, and talk to them, see how to catch up on them, and I was there for like 5 days. I think I was there for 5 days. But one of the things about when I went over to see my daughter, I'm pretty sure I made a conversation about this. I went to go see my Dr. Veriscala, and she was completely like before, when I used to, the first couple years that I went to go see my doctor after my transplant and during, it was very abundant, very comfortable, very abundant. After after the gays started attacking me and everything started really going crazy, I remember talking to her and looking at her and very despised, like didn't want nothing to do with me. I was another dead patient. I was just another dead one. Like, okay, go on your life. But there was no emotions of anything. But it was very much like that in the beginning, because I know that a lot of the doctors or staff, they like to see the patients over periods of time that what they did was a success. You see the nurses or the staff that may still be working there, and they enjoy seeing, the patients that, made a full recovery and they're going about their life, making a visit, and, they're not going to see the doctor very much anymore, and, just for yearly checkups. But I know she doesn't, Dr. Veriscala doesn't work there anymore. I was told that she transferred to another hospital. I don't know where she went, which I don't believe she was actually a doctor, because I remember the last probably three or four times I saw her, she knew that she really wasn't a doctor. And I know it sounds crazy, but I think it's because there are a lot of people who were coming from foreign countries claiming they had a college degree or a doctor's degree, and then they found out they didn't. That may have been the situation. That's what I've been thinking the whole time, but I don't know if that was ever the truth. But that's always a frightening situation, because I still don't know what my bone marrow transplant was. How did I lose all my hair? I thought, and I went through chemotherapy. How did that happen if Julian is only a 3% chance of finding a bone marrow match? He doesn't have the same biological father I do. So how is it that, I don't even say it was a 3% chance. I think it was like a 1% chance. Because the doctors, I remember telling me and saying that when you're trying to look for a bone marrow transplant match, there's 3% of the human population that I think, or 1% to 3% of the human population that can be a match. And that's not, and you got to find the ones that registers for a bone marrow donation. And it's even smaller there. So it's like 1%, 2%. And I remember this very distinctively. I asked in the very beginning, right before my transplant, and they were testing Julian and Frankie, and I asked her, and I said, what are the chances about half brothers and half sisters? Because I have half brothers and siblings. She said that it doesn't work that way. She said that when somebody is only half your sibling, it is just the same as a total stranger from the other side of the world being a possible match, because the blood has changed too much. And that's exactly what she said. Exactly, it's what she said. So testing Julian and Frankie would be testing like Richard Murphy or Nick Herrera or Cisco. That's what it would be. It's the same thing. And so how is it that Julian gave me a bone marrow transplant and I lose all my hair? And not only that, this is where it gets even more in the ratio of how bizarre this is. Julian has a different biological father than me, right? But no, Julian has a different biological father than Frankie also. But when I was inside the doctor's office, they told me, and they said that Frankie and Julian were perfect matches, both of them, and I could choose either one of them, Julian and Frankie, what are the chances of both of them having, different biological fathers than me? That rate, if you do the math, it's completely absurd on the numbers. It's like finding two random bone marrow transplant matches in the entire world or in the U.S. simultaneously, because you got to keep in mind, all the people that donate their bone marrow matches on the donors list, there's like a 1% chance, 3% chance, and people wait years, just like organs, to get a match, to find an organ. But it's even harder with blood. It's even more rare with blood than it is with vital organs. But how is it? What are the chances of Frankie being a match and Julian also being a match? Because they both, between them two, have different biological fathers. So if Michael Palomo and Robert Palomo and Sarah Palomo all got tested, that doesn't make any sense. Because they didn't get tested at all, but that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, they're not any of my blood, but that makes no sense to me. How is it that I went through chemotherapy and you're a transplant patient? This doesn't make any sense. How am I a transplant patient, bone marrow? How am I a bone marrow transplant patient and they both have the science of what the doctor was telling me doesn't make any sense? Doesn't make any sense at all. It's just like they're lying to me. But I did lose my hair like a cancer patient. I lost all my hair, bald, and I look like the chemotherapy cancer patients you see on the commercials all the time. I look exactly like them. I don't know. That's always been lingering over me for very many years of confusion whether I had a bone marrow transplant or not, or if I've always for the minute I figured that out when I was in my mid 30s to early 30s. I thought, I was in my early 30s, like 34, I think I was. I was living in Denver or whatever, and I thought, I have a different biological father. That means that Julian has a different, and this doesn't make any sense at all. Like, how is that even possible? And I thought, did I have a bone marrow transplant? Whose blood did they give me? Because you only give chemotherapy to people that have cancer or bone marrow transplants. You don't have to necessarily have cancer, but they use it for people that have transplants to suppress the immune system and to clean your body out. This doesn't make any rational sense, and that's always been a problem with the situation of all the chaos and health problems that nobody's ever discussed with me. They just shrugged me off and threw me away to the trash can. And why would they spend so much money and all this investments and stuff and then tell me lies all over the medical procedure, and none of it makes sense to me. Did I have a bone marrow transplant, or did they did they take blood from me and then they just went to a science lab and then did some sort of thing to the blood and then regenerate it and give it right back to me? But that's a different procedure, how they reboot the system. But I lost all my hair. My hair all fell out like a cancer patient. They gave me steroids. They gave me a lot of medication. How is it? What are the odds of having both matches of Frankie and Julian? And then them never telling me that Julian was an identical twin, let alone my mother, who couldn't sign paperwork. Because Julian, if he has an identical twin, she asked me, the doctor asked me, and there was this doctor and someone else, like a doctor's assistant or something, and said, how many brothers and sisters do you have? I said, I have two direct brothers that I grew up in the house with. And to my brothers, the only two people you could blood test, but I have three other siblings, but we don't carry the same biological father. I mean, we don't carry the same biological mother, and your father and father. All of them are different as well, but that's always lingered in me. I never knew that story, and it's my own health, you know. But if they're lying to me about that, what else? Why am I not supposed to believe I'm not HIV positive, and all these things that are going on?